Welcome back another week as we focus again on Mark chapter 3. And this time we're looking a little bit further. We just kind of covered the very first little bit because that referred to the Sabbath, which was our focus last time, or part of the focus in chapter 2. And so this time we're moving just a little bit beyond that. And verse number 7 would be where we begin here. And Jesus had withdrawn from the sea. Of course, a lot of Jesus' ministry was around an area referred to as Decapolis, the Deca referring to 10. There were about 10 cities around the Sea of Galilee where Jesus spent a lot of his time. Capernaum was one of the key ones, and there were several others that he would go to from time to time. So anyway, he is here around the sea, and there were a number of the multitude. They had known about his healings, and he had delivered some from devils or demons and things of that sort. And so it goes through a list here, and I want to put it up on the screen for you to kind of see. There are a number of them. Notice that it says Galilee, and that would be sort of a region. And so you can see that. And from Judea, which would have been another region. So those are, I don't know if you want to refer to them as states or counties, but at least a larger area. And then it also mentions from Jerusalem. Of course, we know that's the capital city and key in the whole life of Jesus and where he eventually died. So in Jerusalem. And then notice that it says Idumea, and that's not one that maybe you're real familiar with, and so we'll point that out here on the screen as well. And then also from beyond Jordan, so there was a section out to the east of the Jordan River, and they were coming from there. And then notice way up north there, all the way over against the Mediterranean Sea, you have the area of Tyre and Sidon. They would not have been among the normal Jews. Fact is, we know of one case where Jesus went there, and the lady wanted him to heal her daughter, and he kind of acted like he wasn't even going to do that. And so anyway, they were not among the main Jews who would have had sort of the rights to Jesus' ministry. So anyway, you can see there a number of those different places, and it just gives us the basic idea that Jesus began attracting people from far and wide, all over the place. They were coming, whether it be way down south or way up north, out way to the east, of course the Mediterranean Sea being on the west, and so you can't go any further that way unless you get into Egypt down further south. But anyway, they're coming from all over. And because Jesus had done so much for them, he had healed so many. Notice that there's even a sort of a little bit of a measure of protection taken here, that the people are going to throng him so much that it's time to get into a ship. If he could get just offshore a little bit, they could still hear him, but it's going to keep the bulk of the multitude away from him because of the water there. And so he begins teaching them in that way out of the ship. And yet there were many that were coming to be healed, whether of plagues or of unclean spirits. Notice that's mentioned in verses 10 and 11. Now the thing Jesus is telling them, we don't always necessarily maybe recognize the significance of this, but he's saying, please don't just broadcast this. He had a ministry to do, and yet he knew the more people hear about it, the more it's going to maybe hinder some of the work that he would want to do. And then directly following that, verse number 13, we've mentioned earlier about Jesus calling the first four, James and John, Peter and Andrew first, and then James and John, and then Levi. We've talked about those five. And then it actually gives us the names of those that he has chosen. So let me run through that quickly, and I'll plan to put that list there as well for you to kind of follow along. And Simon he surnamed Peter, and James the son of Zebedee, and John the brother of James. So we have those three. And then actually it says he surnamed them Boanerges, which is the sons of thunder, And then it comes back and refers to Peter's brother Andrew, who was probably the first one, seemingly the first disciple called. And Philip and Bartholomew and Matthew, or that'd be the Levi that we have mentioned earlier, and Thomas and James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus and Simon the Canaanite and Judas Iscariot, which also betrayed him, and they went into an house. And so you see those 12 that Jesus chose, but I believe it mentions it in verse 14 and then also in 15 that his purpose in calling them, yes, part of it was to train them, to leave them behind whenever he goes back into heaven. But he had these 12 with several jobs. First of all, to preach, power to heal sicknesses, and power to cast out devils. And so those three main purposes for his disciples, and the power as well to fulfill the purpose. And then the multitude comes, and he is not, or is scarcely at least, able to even eat bread. And then he even has friends that seem to think that he's just gone off the deep end. And we're going to have to try to get him back in line here, back on track. Anyway, we're going to stop right there. But let's just recognize several things here, that wherever you come from, you can come to Jesus, whether north, south, east, west, whatever. You just come, and you never know who he may want to put his hand on. Of course, obviously, he wants all of us to be his disciple now, and not just 12, not just even 120, but he wants you and he wants me to be his disciple. And so let's take up our cross and follow him today. God bless you. We'll be back with you again, Lord willing, next week.